Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Finance, Audit, Tendering, and Administration Committee, Wednesday, August 9th. Item 1, call to order. Number 2, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? No. Okay. Item 3, approval of agenda. Can I have a mover for the approval of the agenda, please? So moved. Councillor Drong, seconded. Councillor McCabe. Thank you. Item 4, adoption of the minutes, July 5th, 2023. Those minutes have been circulated in your package. Is any questions or concern on those minutes of July 5th, 2023? If there's not, I'd ask.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, number 7, page 3, long-term debt RFP. Betty French, you and I met with departmental officials, with the Department of Finance, to look at taking along with their bond issue, and their advice was that my summation is that stick with the banks because they thought that we'd get a better deal. I know one of the participants did say that he's looking at the rates going down in the next couple of years, if you remember that, Betty. So I don't think we should close the discussion on looking at the bond market, and that is working with the province and ensuring that we look at borrowing money, which I think we're going to have to borrow again, maybe not in the foreseeable future, but there will be a time that I think it's an issue that I just don't want to lie to rest. I think that we have to get more information on it. So if we do go back to the province, specifically the Department of Finance, that we have better numbers and a presentation that could be more convincing. I don't know if our manager wants to add anything to that meeting, or yourself, Mr. Chair, but welcome to hear from.
No, I think in terms of that particular meeting and the information that was shared, I think you're can't say anything further than what you said to it there, Mayor Brown. Unless Betty, manager, there's, I guess ongoing it is conversation that we'll still continue to have with the province, right? And that's I guess how we'll continue to kind of deal and evolve with it. And unless there's anything else further. No.
I think, Mr. Chair, that hopefully down the road we can bring someone in to give us more information, background, and how to use this bonding issue or bonding for future debt servicing, especially long-term debt servicing. Thank you.
All right. Then again, the adoption of the minutes of the July 5th, 2023, we're good with those. So moved, Councillor Drong, seconded by Mayor Brown. Thank you. Item 5, there's information that's circulated in our packages. Senior Active Living Center, tenant lease expiration, and I believe Sue Fraser, the city director here, is going to speak to this in terms of background, and I asked Sue to take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have had this file for a little while. It precedes my time here when I was the person responsible for leases out at Capillary Recreation Inc., we know as Bell Alliance Centre. So I do know the history here, and I also have the benefit of the history for when they actually broke ground at this facility. So I'm hoping I can properly represent the history and where we are today with respect to this particular issue. As you can see in your report, the Seniors Active Living Center has an active lease with Capital Area Recreation, Inc., which is a separately incorporated body of which we're a majority shareholder. They've had this lease agreement since they moved in the early days. It was part of the original build of the facility that the Seniors Active Living Center were to be accommodated at the facility. The lease itself was for only the common area charges. There was no rent charges during the whole term of their lease, and the lease is set to expire. They had the options to renew in the lease 3 times over, which they have fully utilized, and now with it being set to expire in December 2023, they have made a case to both the Carey Board of Directors and to city officials that they want to continue with the same kind of lease agreement, in that they would not pay rent moving forward either. Carey has made the argument as a board, the chairman has represented that as well as the acting manager, that they have a fiduciary responsibility to other stakeholders, and right now this is the only group in the building that doesn't pay any kind of fees or charges around use of the facility. We've heard from the SALC board and their membership in that it's their opinion, their position, that this space was always intended to be for the sole purpose of their organization, for as long as they wish to occupy it, undisputed, no question that was the agreement. But their further position is that it was always intended they would be there rent-free. And unfortunately, that's not written anywhere. So that is the part that is actually being disputed by the Carey board. So their board came back to us and said, we would like for you to actually present this to your council and provide us with the city's position as a majority shareholder as to how you wish us to move forward. It's my recommendation, after consultation with a number of people, that what we might contemplate is in the actual recommendation, where we would, the administration's recommendation is that we would enter into a mutually beneficial agreement directly with Carey on the terms and conditions of that space. On behalf of the Seniors Active Living Center, we remove them from the middle of this. They stay there in perpetuity, but we are paying rent to Carey on their behalf. So right now, as it stands, the city gives the Seniors Active Living Center $15,000 a year to help them pay their bills. We would just eliminate that grant because they just needed it basically for their common area charges. They're self-sufficient with respect to programs and services. We would redirect our grant that we send to them, we would send it directly to Carey, and whatever additional funds Carey's expecting reasonably for rent, and then we would just directly figure out how to do that in the books, because at the end of the day, we're also responsible for 87% of Carey's operational shortfall. So it's a bit of a wash. If we're paying them rent, they're doing better by the books, and it'll be less money coming back to us at the fiscal year end. So it seemed like the best solution to remove the emotion from all of this, and the Seniors Active Living Center can live happily ever after at Carey, but Carey is still collecting rent for that very valuable space out at their property. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have.
Thank you for that summary, Sue. Are there any questions from the committee to Sue on her summary?
Yeah.
Councillor Drown?
Thank you, Councillor McAleer. I just, it seems to be to me that, if we're paying $15,000 to pay the Senior Active Living Center's bills, that it would go to Carey to pay it. But, for us to step in and pay more when we're paying 87% of the operational cost. I know when they come in, they have a wish list and we're constantly giving to them. Something like this, just to move the 15,000 over and keep the Seniors Active Living Center, in a state that, everyone's happy there, but I just don't think we should be signing on for like a rent if they increase it. I mean, we're paying a big shot of all these expenses, right? So, and like I said, they come in here and they ask for everything, and we're pretty generous looking after the building. They do a good job of renting it, but I just don't think that's where we have to go with this. Does anybody else have any questions on that type of thing?
Yeah, I do. I'd just like to follow up there.
Excuse me, Mayor
ahead,
Brown,
sir.
and so Bob, or Councillor Drong, are you saying you're in favor of continuing on with however the math flows on the 15K, but nothing more?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that, I think it was built, and I'll give the council of the day, when they brought this on, it was an area where seniors could go and be active, and I give our administration, credit for taking them out of this. They don't want to be negotiating all the time, whereas think, we could do, a job that wouldn't put emotions in there. But again, we're paying a lot of the bills, so it's, the 15,000 I'm okay with. Keep it going. Give it to Kerry, but I'm not interested in increasing, the rent and us being the residents have to pay rent. I think this is a good deal. And I just want to keep it the way it was. I'm not interested in going anymore. I guess that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drong, and I know, Sue, you referred to, and the material, or at least what I read, same as everyone else, I guess, indicates there was nothing kind of written down on the on it, and I guess back in the day, I don't know what anyone else's memories like, but Mayor Brown, I don't know what your long-term understanding is of this. I mean, you go back to your council days, and do you have anything you can share with us on this?
Yeah, if you go to the agreement on page, the original agreement back from 2003, it states the $15,000. It's in the agreement. Did you read the agreement? Okay. It states 15,000 back in 2003, that we would provide that for common area maintenance, upgrades, and so forth.
Yes, no, I see that, but I guess the piece I was referring to, indefinitely or forever, I guess, was...
Yeah. So did you want a little history on it? I was on council. I was the chair of Parks and Recreation at the time that it was built. Sue Fraser was the manager of Parks and Recreation. It was an initiative that was taken by Mr. Mayor George McDonald, who took that from a report of what that report was put together by, I think the Jenkins report, and our chair of the board, Mr. Sean Murphy, sat on that task force. Task force came up with an idea. As you know, originally that was to go on the property parallel to Belvedere Avenue, the experimental farm, but because of the blowback, we said, okay, let's see if we can work something out with UPEI. So we did. And it's 87% operational from our coffers, 13% from the university. I believe Stratford pays $15,000 a year for operation. And for all the capital upgrades, it's 87%, 13%. So we do a very, very good job in providing funding for that facility. So when the government of the day, it was the Pat Binns government along with the federal government, they came down and made an announcement that they were adding more money to the new facility. George McDonald, the mayor of the day, said, I'm adding $600,000 from the city of Charlottetown's coffers to build a seniors active living center. Because at that point, Mr. Chair, they had moved from they were down at the old Bat McRae plant facility, which is now Triple K or KK printing, and then they moved out to the old Royalty Mall, and it was at that point they had no place. And the commitment was made not only by the mayor of the day, it was made by council. The deputy mayor who sat in this chair, Clifford Lee, agreed with the mayor of the day, and so did all of council. So that facility was paid full, not with any other money from the feds of the province, by the city of Charlottetown, for the seniors that live here in around Charlottetown. And Mr. Chair, the other thing you have to note, there's a lot of dynamics to this issue. I'm just curious, could I just go through you, Chair, to the Director of Community Services? The letter, Sue, that came on January 24th, 2002, did you supply that letter? It was signed by Harry Goody, the CAO at the time? Or was that supplied by someone else?
That letter was part of my research that came from our own records management, because we were trying to identify the part where it actually, the intent was to always have the senior section covering the cost of the senior section. That was always the intent. And that's why I made sure that was in there, so that it was understood, because that's always been the Seniors Active Living Center's position. It was always the intent that any costs associated with the senior section of the facility would be covered by the city. However, when the actual lease agreement was prepared and signed off on by all parties, including the city, there was nowhere in that lease agreement did it speak to perpetuity. It spoke to options to renew for so many years and an end of term. So that's where we obviously dropped the ball. If that was the intent of the city all along, there should have been language in the lease agreement, the tri-party agreement, that this would be, what's the point of having options to renew if you're going to allow them to continue to rent in perpetuity? That should be actually, like rent-free in perpetuity, that should be the language in any agreement if that's the intent. But that's where we missed the beat, was they just assumed they would live there happily ever after rent-free, but we didn't write that into anything. So that's why we're here today with this particular item, is because the intent was one thing, but what actually happened in legally binding agreements was a totally different thing.
Yeah, so, how best to, to move forward.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one more thing, just for
Yes,
clarification?
go ahead.
In your package, you'll see a note that came from the management at Cary that was asking to Councillor Duran's point and the 15,000, just for a point of reference on that, because I didn't speak to that in my presentation, that I'm just looking for it here now, but it's in your package where the acting manager sent a letter to Seniors Active Living Center. This is the amount that we would be looking for, and I believe if I can pull it up here, it was like 35.
Yeah, it's on page 23, and I have the letter, and it is $36,710 plus HST, as well as common area charge of $75.75 plus HST. That'd be the total bill.
Yeah, so just so people have a point of reference, the difference between what Cary's asking for and the 15,000. And the only reason why I'm mentioning that as a follow-up to Councillor Duran's point is that they're asking for that amount because at the end of the day, whatever the shortfall is, although we're responsible for the bulk of an operational shortfall, the university is at the table for 13% of a shortfall. So when we make a decision not to pay the regular rent that you would get for that type of facility, this isn't even market rate actually, this is even much lower than that. It's not really a commercial rate that they're charging. We would be impacting our other shareholder who's at the table contributing part of the operational shortfall at the end of the year. So that's just a point worth noting. Otherwise, it would be much easier to just say, we're going to do this and just pay more of a shortfall at the end of fiscal.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, for the university, and you and I are graduates, we're all graduates from UPEI, this is a good deal for the university. We built a $25 million facility that sits on UPEI's campus that is not only used by the citizens of Charlottetown and the capital area, but the students of at UPEI, the faculty, the staff. So it's a big plus for them. The meetings that have taken place with our seniors is that, as one participant said at the meeting where they presented their arguments to the board, she said, this is not just about the law, it's about justice. This is justice for our seniors. And Councillor Duran and I don't agree too much, but I agree with him on this, is that I don't think we'll pay them the $15,000. Just keep in mind also, Mr. Chair, if you look at page 36, it's headed up by Bell Line Centre. As you know, they're renegotiating their contract with the Kerry Board. And currently the contract is that the city gets $50,000 from Bell for services. So that would be cell services, fiber op, or maybe we have Danny Mullins doing fiber op. But thing is that we get that service, and $20,000 goes to the Kerry Board. The new deal would be $50,000 a year in cash over 7 years to the Kerry Board. And when that was brought to my attention, I said, well, if you're getting $50,000 more in cash, that means we can reduce our contribution by $50,000. Like, if we want to play this, are we getting best dollar for our funding? Then so be it. But I think that we owe it to our seniors, and I think a lot of people would agree with what we're saying here today, is that it's a seniors facility that was built for seniors. I'm not asking to put it in perpetuity. I'm just asking to leave the agreement as is. And the Kerry Board should be looking at other ways of raising, increasing their funding or increasing their revenue, other than doing it on the backs of seniors.
Thank you. Mayor Brown, is there any other comments, questions on this? Well, I would propose that we, going forward in terms of not replying, or I guess not committing to their request for for the additional funding, but leaving it as status quo on the continued 15,000 or whatever they've been receiving. Continue on with that, and then if there's anything, I mean, I don't know if we can give this any more time. I mean, I guess it is December 2020, December of this year. So we are kind of, I guess, running out of time. But if there's, Sue, do you have anything in light of the discussion at the committee level here? Have anything further to add in terms of advice, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm just looking for clarification on direction. So are we asking Capital Area Recreation, Inc. to enter into a new lease agreement with the same terms and conditions as the preceding one? Is that the ask?
Correct. Can we take your advice on the mechanic piece to remove the active living center in the middle, and you talked about.
So do you want then that the city will be will enter into an agreement with Kerry
On behalf
this
of-
and leave the Seniors Active Living Center out of the next
Well,
lease
that's what you
agreement?
were suggesting, wasn't that?
Well, no, I was suggesting a different kind of agreement where they're not in a lease agreement anymore. We're just paying a certain amount of money on their behalf for them to reside there. It wouldn't necessarily be a lease agreement because we're essentially we're the majority shareholder of the property. So we don't need to really have a lease agreement with them legally.
Okay, all right, so.
But what I was suggesting was some sort of agreement where we're just taking the Seniors Active Living Center out as the middleman so that they know that they don't have to ever deal with this again, because I think this has been pretty traumatic for all of them.
Yep.
I think we all agree on that piece.
Yep.
So it's just what does this look like logistically? So I understand what our next steps are.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I could ask, instead of 5-year, 10-year, make it a 20-year agreement. Because you could probably another 20, 30 years for that building. I would just say, these 10-year agreements, just keep bringing it back up. The seniors active living center executive and their membership have asked, like, it has to be a longer agreement, so they just don't have to revisit this every 5, 10, 15 years. Just go 20 years.
Is there any thought on that, Councillor Drong or McCabe?
I think it's, the original agreement was for 20 years, so this one should be for 20 years, and then that would settle everyone down, and they wouldn't have to deal with that. And like I said, as Sue said, we would pay the 15,000 to them. And I mean, over the last 20 years, you go through the contracts, there has been a lot of times where the city stepped in and paid extra different times, right? I think at the beginning, parking wasn't free, but now, people pay for parking in that lot. So, all these things add up. So let's just make it, like the mayor said, 20 years and move on from that.
Sue, can you duly note it? And then,
Duly noted, I just still need clarification as to whether the agreement is between city and Cary, or whether we're going into another agreement between Cary Seniors Active Living Center and the city, which was a tri-party. I just need clarification on that piece, who the agreement is with, who the parties are.
City.
It's basically,
Sorry, it's our facilities.
yeah,
It's-
okay,
it's-
so the administration recommendation, A, B, and C, you are, it sounds like, agreeing to all of that. You just have a cap on the amount you're prepared to pay, which is the 15.
correct.
That's the only difference.
That's it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is that clear?
Yep, great. And, I don't know if there's any way, another time, to deal with the gray area about the forever piece or whatever. Maybe
Perpetuity.
there's.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, thank you. Item 6 on our agenda.
Chair. If I may?
Sorry, CAO Elner, go ahead.
Thank you. If the committee could provide instruction that this goes forward to council, an agreement that the recommendations go forward to council, for council to approve and move forward. So a resolution would come of this from council to direct staff to enter into this agreement for the $15,000 as well, which will be added to that resolution. We just need agreement among the committee that it's going to council.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
Yep, so moved. Yep.
Second.
And seconded by Mayor Brown. Thank you. You have what you need there, Jackie? Thank you. Thank you, CAO Elner. Again, on item 6, approval of previous planning services and current extension of services. Page 24, and CAO Elner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one's a little different in terms of what I'm presenting to you here today. So as you know, administration has been paying close attention to the Municipal Government Act and procurement policy and things that we follow and permissions that we ask for. So there is a contract within planning that was signed by administration for $50,000. It didn't go through the tendering process of 3 quotes because there wasn't 3 quotes to be gained. There was only one organization on island who could actually provide this service to the city. So the contract was drawn up based on that information. In retrospect, that contract should have come through to council for approval for the $50,000. And there should have been a resolution that gave instruction for this contract to be signed. And the contract should have been signed by the CAO and the mayor. So that's the first piece. And the second piece of this is we still have this firm providing services to the planning department. We have a new manager starting in September, along with a couple of planner twos. But we do need these services in the meantime as a stopgap. So what's being requested is that an additional $30,000 be approved, and that we have permission to sign a change of scope to allow that to happen. And that would be the CAO and the mayor signing off on this. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Perhaps I'll ask you, CAO Eleanor, just in reading the information and the background and the rationale, I get like it kind of because I'm taking it a big piece of the reason why is we're not staffed up currently. So basically, if you're able to fill this request or whatever, they'll be kind of, this group will be, I guess, kind of doing the work of what we'd like to think our staff planners would be doing if we had them boots on the ground. Is that basically what I got from it? That's basically.
That's correct,
So
Mr. Chair.
what's happening, this is going to be a supplement in the meantime till you get staffed up in your planning department to the scale we need it.
That's correct. So this firm, over the last number of months, has been picking up all these extra files that we haven't had the capacity to deal with. They've been dealing with some of the more tricky files. They're currently working on carrying part of the Park Street files that have come in. So they've been supplementing where we have the gaps, essentially. And it's anticipated that we won't need them after September. This money is just to make sure that we have enough to pay for the support until then.
Councillor Drown?
Thank you, Councillor McAleer. The issue I have is, again, policy procedure. We did this without going through the policy and procedure, I feel. If they're a local company, that's one thing. Could this be outsourced, anywhere across Canada? Could anybody do this type of thing, or do they have to be here? If that's the case, then I understand. If, you have to be here to know this stuff. But it goes back to, again, the policy and procedures of, what we're supposed to be doing, going to tender so everybody can do it. I don't know if you can answer those questions. Thank you.
Can. Through the chair and to Councillor Duran. Yes, so this person, for development planning and processing development permits, you have to be able to be on site to look at these files, and you have to know to be able to do site visits. So that's why it had to be someone who was island-based. We already know that this is a weakness of the procurement bylaw, the way that it is written, but it is written if it's in the city's best interest. We can take steps like this. It's not ideal. The best way is to open up, but in this case, I would say it's extenuating circumstances. There were no additional firms or people available who could do this work on the island and be on the island continually to do this work. So that's why this firm was selected.
Mr. Chair?
Mayor Brown?
Just through the chair to CAO Eleanor. So Eleanor, this is Emily Traynor, right, we're talking about? I know we shouldn't put names to it. But the planner that we're looking at from Dillon, this person is a registered professional planner. He or she can stamp off any plans.
Through the chair to the mayor, Emily is a candidate, not a full registered professional planner, but we don't just have Emily through Dillon Consulting, we also have registered professional planners with
Within
Dillon
their office.
Consulting that can review Emily's work and sign off on these things. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the work of what we've been doing is Dillon has been providing the background, and then the planning staff here at the city, who are RPPs, have all the background work done for them, the recommendation, and then they can sign off saying through their RPP to make sure that we tick all the boxes, especially when it comes to appeals.
Yeah, the analogy I can make here, Mr. Chair, is that my brother, who's an engineer, for him to stamp drawings, he has to have his P.Eng. Betty French is a manager of finance. For her to sign off on audited statements or statements, she has a CPA. So with all the, how can I put it, all the calls I've been receiving about developments trying to get off the ground, no pun intended, it's been difficult because we have staff that are registered professional planners like yourself, and then we have some staff that are not. And like going forward, and I repeatedly asked that any new managers we hire, that person has that registered professional planning designation so that we can start moving some of these files through the system. And I know it may take a little time to catch up, but I think we're in a good position because we need to hire people. And when we hire, we need to have registered professional planners so that they can look at the file, yes, good to go, check off the box, move on. So are you confident that, we're able to, the new planners, you're looking at the planner 2s, the planner 3s, the managers, that we'll be in a good position to have RPPs there to move these files quicker?
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's no secret there is a shortage of registered professional planners, not only in this island, but actually globally. So the good news is that our new manager of development that we have hired is an RPP. Okay. The planner 3 in development is an RPP. We have a new planner 2 starting. They are going to get their RPP. It should take about a year, but we have the folks who can mentor them and sign off on logbooks to get them there. And we also have a planner 1 who I believe is an RPP as well. So we're lining up exactly what we need to close this gap. With the announcement today of the planner 2 for development, that leaves only 2 positions left that need to be filled in planning for planners, a planner 2 in development and a planner 2 in policy. So we're almost there and fully staffed. The new manager and the planner 2 are starting in September, so we should be able to get things moving again, yes.
Last question through the chair. So, Eleanor, if one of our Dillon employees is already filtering back their work completed and being stamped by Dillon, can we not do that for some of our other staff that don't have RPPs? Can we do that?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the answer is yes, but it still has to be prepared by a qualified planner. So you can't just, take any person off the street who's doing like a review. And so it would be, Emily is a candidate member on their way to a full RPP. So it's someone simply reviewing that work to be able to sign off on it. And we will be doing that in the stopgap while people are working as candidates towards their registered professional planner status.
CEO, just my own or just clarification, the language and the terms. The RPP, right? Registered
Professional planner.
Plan. And just wondering, like, how long does it take for someone to get to that accreditation? Is it I'm guessing it's a function of education, books, and in the chair, or how? Like, what kind of a timeline does it take someone to get an RPP, like a law degree or CA, or just generally?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So real quick, there's 2 routes in. One, you've graduated from a planning school, an accredited planning program, whether it's master's or undergrad. Then they have to do a year of mentorship and logbooks and sit an exam. That's the one route in if you've done an accredited planning degree. The other route in is if you come from a different kind of degree, or maybe you're from another country, you need to have 5 years of planning experience. Then you apply to become a candidate. Then you have a year of mentorship and logbooks, and you sit an exam, and then you achieve your registered professional planner.
No, thank you for that education piece, appreciate it. Is there any more questions of CAO Elner on the request? We all good?
Do you need direction to move that? I
Through to,
will-
through to council, yes, please.
I will move that we move this to council for approval.
And the seconder? Seconder, okay. Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Mayor Brown. Thank you. Okay, moving along, item 7, and Chief Administrative Officer, signing authority and the Municipal Government Act. Again, CAO Elner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this kind of grows out of the previous report, and it's also looking, as we're working on continuous improvement and making sure that it's very clear of lines of responsibility and authority and such things. So in reviewing Section 156 of the Municipal Government Act, it's very clear in there that the mayor and the CAO are to sign off on many things such as contracts, agreements, financial instruments, all these types of things. There's an ability under there, and it's very common in most municipalities, where the CAO is delegated signing authority. So just the CAO can sign things and not the mayor as well. And in the Municipal Government Act, it says that it can be delegated to the CAO to be able to sign, but there is a limit, and it's $25,000 or less, which is quite low compared to other municipalities. But that it is what it is under the Municipal Government Act. And that if that signing authority is granted to the CAO, any contracts that the CAO signs alone then has to be tabled with council after the fact so you can see what was signed. So this is what's under the Municipal Government Act. Over the last number of years, the practice has been a little different. There's been different agreements signed, singularity by the CAO. And this is us really kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's to make sure we have the proper resolutions in place for things that are being signed. And I think in the future, maybe after we get through the procurement policy, we'll look at maybe a signing authority bylaw or policy or something to that effect. So it's very clear the lines of who can sign for what. Thank you.
Are there any questions to CAO Elner? Councillor Drown?
Well, I just, and it's not a personal thing. I just believe if there's two people signing and it's a checklist, it's no way of any indication on your performance or I guess it's your position. It just, I feel better when there's more checks and balances, because if you leave and there's somebody else in, then I just think having it this way with the mayor and the CAO sign, and I'm just more comfortable with that. So that's my opinion on it.
Thank you, Councillor Drown.
Go ahead, there.
Councillor McCabe?
Oh, okay. And I'm like that. I know it takes a long time until we can develop a policy where we look at doing it differently. But I think when you have that accountability, when, small business, any business, they have the two signers, it protects the corporation, it protects you. And I would be okay unless we figure out a different way or hear from the mayor that something's different. I like the two signing authority as well.
So you're saying you'd amend this at the CAO and the mayor? Is that what you're saying?
I just think it's good for protection for everybody based on our experience, yeah.
So CAO and the mayor? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mayor Brown?
This is an amazing day, Councillor. Councillor Toronto and I are agreeing on again. I can't believe this. Hopefully people are watching today on live stream that there could be some collaboration, cooperation, consensus. Mr. Chair, just going through you, CAO Eleanor, I'm looking at 156, current August 1st, 2023. Subsection 1, checks, electronic transfers, agreements, contracts, deeds, and other legal or financial instruments shall be signed or authorized by both the mayor and the chief administrative officer of a municipality. Where's the 25,000?
Through the chair, it is under,
Regulations?
it's 156.5. So go further down where it says authority to the chief administrative officer.
So subsection 5, despite subsection 1, a council may by resolution alone to sign contracts and agreements if A, the value of the contract or agreement does not exceed 25,000, B, the chief administrative officer tables a written summary of the nature and value of the contract or agreement at the next meeting of council. Just going back to what we've experienced before you arrived, I think there's still some jitters that we have, and I share those concerns that are raised here by both Councillors McCabe and Duran. And I think going forward, it's just, I believe it's $4,000 right now our LPOs are good for, limited purchase orders. So that doesn't require any signature from the office of the mayor. Is that, again, going through the chair to the manager finance?
Is that true?
Betty?
That's in our procurement policy about the $4,000, where goods and services with a total of $4,000 or less
Right,
shall be obtained.
yeah.
This doesn't actually talk about who signs off on it. This is to do with the
Procurement,
Yeah.
procurement piece,
Yeah.
not the authorization piece, whereas this is to do with agreements and contracts.
right.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to be clear, this is actually, it's quite complex. So I'm going to be very honest with you. You have not been receiving all these things for double signature right
I
now.
know.
In the past, they have been signed by the CAO. I don't know what kind of volume this is going to be yet, but we're going to try it and see. What this means, so there's the checks, electronic transfers, agreements, contracts, deeds, and other legal or financial instruments shall be signed and authorized by the chief administrative officer and the mayor, unless for 25,000 or less, it's delegated to me to sign. And then I have to provide a summary that then comes to council of what I've signed. So there is that double check. It is coming back to council. You're going to see a list of what was signed off on and a summary of what each of those items were. Generally, in different municipalities, you would find that the CAO has a certain amount of signing authority. There's also a delegation piece that maybe directors or deputies or whoever have that signing authority for them too, if they're away and you need another signature. For the mayor, what's also included in this section, and this is why we'd want a signing bylaw, to show what the delegation is. If you're away, the deputy mayor is signing on behalf. We don't have that anywhere right now either. So this would bring all of it together. It also means that, which hasn't been coming forward to the mayor, there are many things being signed off on this municipality. The way this is worded, it's all contracts, all agreements. So that could be down to $1 in all the business that this municipality conducts. So this is the challenge. It's actually, quite frankly, it's less work for you and I to sign everything instead of me having to summarize everything that I sign and come back to council with. But this just provides a little bit more flexibility to be able to do the day-to-day work that we need to do.
So, Mr. Chair, what's being said is that we're not following what's in the MGA. That's what's going on. That has been going on, not with you, but the last term also. I did not see a lot of this. So, to say that I was overworked on signing off contracts, I wasn't. I think this is where and I'm not speaking for Councillor Duran, but what I'm saying, I think this is where I'm looking at the whole issue, is that I saw the 4,000 as the benchmark because we have an LPO. That can stay there. But as for signing off contracts, I've not seen them. And I've not seen them in the last 4 years. So when you brought this to my attention, I wanted to wait until you clarified what I was thinking, and that is, I haven't. But again, we live in a small, beautiful city. It's a capital, it's an historic capital. We don't always do everything, we don't do things like other municipalities because of our uniqueness. But I believe the checks and balances are very important in our democracy here at this level. And I would just like to hold off until we just get more comfortable about what our job roles are. And CAO Eleanor, I am very appreciative that you've brought this to the floor in an open session, because what you were just saying there, I've never seen them. And a lot of times I always wondered that I'm a co-signer of the checks, but I've never seen anything to sign off. So I think going forward, it may mean more work, but that 4,000 is already there in my mind. It's there for managers, correct, Betty? Managers can give out LPOs for 4,000 without being signed off by the CAO or the mayor, because they have LPOs, which are limited purchase orders.
That's a purchase. This is a contract or agreement. I wouldn't see those as being different.
They are different, but in the end, it's purchase. If I'm wrong in saying that, I'm just, again, it's the checks and balances. I believe in checks and balances, and I think that I'd like to stay the course. Stay the course.
Councillor Drummond? All right, so gets where that puts us operationally here at the committee level is we won't be sending this to council then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the committee, you can't
Not
not
send it.
send something to council. But that said, I hear what's around the table, so I actually feel like we don't have to take this to council at this point. I think the best course of action, other than sending everything that needs to be signed through to the mayor, I think there's some more clarifying conversations that have to happen in terms of purchase orders and tying this all together. And maybe this comes forward again further down the road a little bit under a signing authority bylaw, so it's crystal clear who can sign for what and when and what that looks like. Because we've only just started to dig into this, and we're only starting to get the clarity. So I think that would probably be the best course of action and next steps, and we could just bring it back in the future to further discuss. But in the meantime, double signatures on everything according to the Municipal Government Act.
So, Mr. Chair, sorry, Councillor McCabe, go ahead.
I was just following up, like, could this not, we're still waiting for a procurement bylaw to come to this committee, correct? And couldn't that, with signing authority, with kind of be looked at in that broader scope with all of these things, little parts of that procurement bylaw? Are we going to see that in the next little while, couple of months? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, we can. I think in the end, we might end up having two different bylaws, one for signing authority and one for procurement. Two different kind of functions and processes to address. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so that's just to follow up on what Councillor McCabe has stated. I thought we already had the template of the procurement bylaw somewhere. And if we do, Councillor McAleer and I were going back and forth over the weekend. I thought it was going to be on the agenda. So I'm just giving notification under new business. I want it on the next agenda.
No, and yes, and try to get it there, but yeah, under new business is, Betty,
Well,
can
the
we have that?
The timing of the procurement bylaw is under the BDO matrix council report, so it is going to be discussed there
And,
as an update, yeah.
Yeah.
Just as an update.
yeah, and that's the next update. I don't have the matrix in front of me, would be when on that?
Well, that's coming.
Okay,
can
all
we-
right,
when we
okay,
get to that
great,
council
okay,
report,
yes,
can we
okay.
talk about it?
Yeah, excuse me, thank you. So, just help me, Eleanor, if you, how do we leave 7 then?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I've outlined some next steps. If you're okay with those next steps, then we're good to go after this conversation today. So it won't go forward to council at this point,
That's the clarity I
but
was looking
could
for.
go to council at a future point after we've kind of
Okay,
digged into
good.
this a little further. Thank you.
And we're all clear on that, the committee? Great, thank you. Thank you, CAO, Eleanor. Moving on to 8, monthly financial statements. Betty French, if you can kind of just, if there's any questions of Betty or comments on that, but Betty, just a high-level kind of review of your statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report includes both the June financial statements, so that's the first quarter report, the first 3 months of our fiscal year. There's also a capital project update for last fiscal year and a first quarter capital project update to the end of June. So looking at the June financial statements, we start off with city revenue. The city revenue to date to the end of June is $17,600,000, which the right-hand column tells us is 25% of our budget. We're 25% of the way through the year. It looks like we're right where we would expect to be. We have the various expenditures there by department, and overall, those two are 25% of our budget. Now, that also includes encumbrances, so it's not just the expenditures made to the end of June, it's also anything that's been encumbered by a purchase order. But that, again, is 25% of the budget. And then the budget is, the expenditure lines are balanced out to zero using the parts of the prior year operating surplus. And then similar for water and sewer. Water and sewer, the operating revenue is 14.5 million, which is 23%, just a little less than the quarter. We have the expenditures, 15,600,000. My apologies, I'm looking at the budget line. Let's go to the actual line, column, sorry. The year-to-date expenditures for water and sewer are just under 3 million, which is 27%, so that's a little bit more than a quarter. So it looks like our revenue's down a little bit, our expenditures are up a little bit. That'll be something we'll keep an eye on as the year moves forward. And again, just as an allocation entry, I brought everything down to zero using the prior year surplus to balance that out. So if there are any particular things that stand out to folks that they want an explanation on, not everything is at the 25%. For instance, the transit system, it looks like they've spent 86% of their budget, but that's because they have a large encumbrance. So that just means they've put a purchase order through for expenditures that they know they're going to make during the year. It's not expenditures that have actually been made at this point in time. But there's nothing at the moment in these 3 months financial statements that causes me concern. It's tracking about the way I would expect it to be. Then the capital budget is something new or newer. It hasn't been something that's regularly come to council. Maybe it did in the past, but not in the recent times. So this was a suggestion from the BDO recommendations to have a spreadsheet that comes to council regularly. So what this is the first one is for the last fiscal year. The year ended March 31st, 2023. And there's a listing there of all the capital projects that were part of the budget. We have the operating budget. We have any budget changes to give a revised budget. There's partner funding listed there, so that gives the total available to spend on the project. Then there's the year-to-date expenditures and any remaining amount to be spent. So when I was doing a summary review of this, I was looking to see, are there any projects that are over budget? So that the remaining amount column, the one that's second from the right, are there any amounts there that are negative? And there is the occasional one, and there's usually a reason for that, like a movement in allocation, or there was a couple there under police where they had a budget the previous year, and when the capital budget's done the previous year, we do it kind of in January, February, and you may think you're going to spend all of your money, so you don't include it in your budget for the following year, but then for various reasons, it's not spent until the new year. So it shows up here in the new year when there wasn't actually a budget for it, but it was approved and budgeted for in the previous year. So what I'm looking for in general is like the whole category. So all of fire, adequately budgeted for? And yes, at the end of March of '23 for fire, there was 1.9 million that had not yet been spent. Police was actually over budget, but that was because they spent $130,000 on small vehicles that was budgeted the previous year. There was also a motorcycle that I understand was in an accident, and it was, they got $23,000 in insurance to cover it, but the actual vehicle cost $37,000, so there was a shortfall there. And again, in sidearm replacements, there was $84,000 that was budgeted the previous year. None of it was spent, so they spent $50,000 in this current year. So that makes sense to me. If I look under EMO, there's $783,000 that has not been spent at the end of the year. Street rehabilitation, we have 4.5 million that had been approved in last year's budget where the expenditures had not been made. And on we go. So if there's any, I can go through it a little bit category by category or major project by major project, or if you just have any particular questions you want to ask.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Betty. This, it's great. It takes a long time to try and follow the budget for someone like me. And I'm looking at things, so when we know things change, for example, the Centennial Drive, Mount Edward Road to Maple Avenue sidewalk project that we know is changing in Public Works, but it still shows in the budget. Do we not adapt and change our budget to reflect projects, or is that a different project? That's a different project. Okay, so I'm going to go down a couple more lines where it says water store or sewer storm, small infills and repairs. We have $300,000 budgeted for a ditch infill, storm water management, but we're being told that we're not doing storm water management. So I'm just wondering why we have this in our budget as money that's allotted for this stuff if we're not actually doing this stuff.
This is money that would have been allotted in the previous capital budget. So this is a summary of where we were at, what was approved in the budget, and what was spent in the budget to the end of March of 2023.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with the projects that you're talking about, but my presumption is that if we were to look at the 23-24 capital budget, those projects would no longer be in there.
Okay, but is this like a working document where we would adjust it as we know, or? I'm just wondering, like, again, if that's, I just sent a message to the Chair of Public Works to say, there is money according to this document. So why?
This is last year's.
Okay.
So this is not money that you could spend in the current year. This was last year's money.
Oh,
So they would only have that money still to spend if it was brought forward as carry forward money into the new budget.
so this is like last year's budget?
Yes,
All of this? Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, just to go through the,
Mayor Brown?
there are 3 months ending June 20th for the financial statements. Betty, I do want to say, this is not just a snapshot. This is a clear picture of where we have been in the last 3 months. And I really appreciate the work that's been put into these numbers. Like you said, total city revenue, about 25%, right?
Yes.
And our total expenditures for city, 25%. But the city revenue less expenditures is at 6.3 million. And I know that doesn't concern you because it's only the first quarter. But if our revenue and expenditures are the same, then why are we, again, might be something that you see through a CPA lenses I don't see.
Okay, the 6.3 million is the budget line.
That's right.
The current year to date
Is 2 million.
2 million, and if we add in the encumbrances, we come up with a minus 2 million.
Right, which is on the next line below, right? Like it's,
Yes.
yeah. So fiscally, after the first quarter, with the numbers that you've generated, it's safe as we go. Okay? Now, just to go to the capital budget for 2022, 2023. First time I've ever seen one like this.
Yes.
Yeah. So 4 years, 2018 to 2022, never saw this. And this is something I always said, that if you go to the last page, page 4, you'll see that we budgeted 90 million with the partner funding. And what did we spend? 35, correct?
That's correct.
So I know the capital budget always looks like it's way out there. Can we afford it? But this is not this is not an uncommon result. Past capital budgets, we way over budget, and then when it comes time to do the actual figures, it could be half or maybe
That's correct.
40%.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And like
So-
this particular my apologies,
No,
I'm interrupting.
can I just finish on that?
Absolutely.
And I know you have lots of information to add, but if departments are going to be forward in these big capital projects, then they should be looking at those goalposts, right? Those milestones to say, okay, are we going to meet it in the first quarter? Are we going to meet it in the second quarter? If we're not going, like, this is the tracking we have to be doing. This is data that's very important in projecting where we go as a city or a municipality fiscally, because, I know past CAOs always talked about, we better have a reserve. I'm not a big reserve person, because I think, you know what, money's there, spend the money, need more, borrow more. But you know what, you can pay it, you'll pay it back someday. So don't worry about that. Never worry about where the money will come from. But this, again, I appreciate, thank you very much for showing the data that of the 90 million 91 we looked at with joint funding, we only spent 35. And I'm going to be asking questions on the next one too, but I'll wait. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Any more questions to Betty? Thank you, Betty.
There is, pardon me, Mr. Chair, the next statement there is the June capital project update. So that's our first quarter of this year. So this Councillor Baquet, perhaps is the more relevant information for you. This gives this year's capital budget and where we are at year to date to the end of June. So again, if we were to do as Mayor Brown was suggesting and go to the bottom of the report, our total spending, our own budget plus the partner funding is 94 million. We have spent, to make sure I have the right column, that's interesting. Of our 94 million, to the end of June, we've only spent 8 million, so we have an interesting number, because 94 million less 8 million does not give you 74 million. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I will check that. But there's a lot more spending to go on, a lot more bills to be coming in. But I would suspect we would have maybe not as dramatic a result at the end of this fiscal year as we did last year. The managers have suggested that they expect most of their projects to be completed. Last year, only having the 35 million, couple unusual things. One was COVID caused projects to be later going through, as well as the Big Simmons project that is in there. The whole thing is in there, even though we know it's a multi-year project. So something we are working towards when we get to the next capital budget is to have a better way to display and present to folks what the expected expenditures are for this year and in future years to help make that 94 million compared to 35 million, have it make a bit more sense, provide a bit more clarity.
Thank you, Betty. Yeah, again,
I have a question,
Mayor
Mr. Chair.
Brown, Mayor Brown?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Manager of Finance is doing a very good job in answering questions, providing data. So page 3 of our June capital, this question come up after the announcement for the $23 million federal, provincial, municipal fund or agreement was announced for the transit buses and the transit shed and so forth. Through the chair to our manager of finance, Betty, we paid the $2 million for the transit shed. Would that be part of the 23 million? You know what? You can't answer it now. I'll just leave it with you. Because I think the federal government's share was 9.1 million. The provincial share was 7.3, and the remainder of that 23 is city's share. Does the remainder of our share include the $2 million that we paid for the transit shed and property on Longworth Avenue? I don't think.
Through the chair to your worship, I'm not sure offhand about the purchase of the property. I see 2.7 million of city money for the new transit facility.
That's it.
I don't know if that includes the property acquisition, but perhaps it does. I can check on that and let you know. But you can see in the partner funding column there for transit, there's a total of 430,000. That is the federal and provincial portion of the announcement the other day.
What was announced? So our municipal contribution, can we subtract the 2.7?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Betty. Again, echoing Mayor Brown's comments, to you and your team for getting this data and reporting and the capital projects and the budget year to date. From what I understand, hasn't perhaps happened in the past, so it's great information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll move along to number 9, tenders, RFPs, RFQs. And again, Betty, that's you.
Yes, this report presents the position of RFPs, RFQs, tenders as they are any unawarded ones. So some of these are closed, and it shows you the date it was posted and the deadline, but they haven't actually been awarded yet. So just to give you a summary of how things have progressed since our last meeting.
All right.
To let you know how busy folks have been with their procurement and their contracts. There's a lot going on.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Manager Betty on the RFPs? No, good. All right. Thank you again, Betty. Thank you for that. And all right, agenda back up here. So we'll continue on to item 10. BDO matrix update. And Betty, keep rolling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report gives a summary of the items on the BDO matrix that had a finance manager, finance department component. So the first one was to develop spreadsheets to track capital projects and report quarterly to the Finance Committee. And that's the capital report we were just looking at.
Yep.
The suggestion was that we do that quarterly, like that's a report that we maintain regularly. For us to include it as part of the regular monthly package is something that wouldn't be a problem. Are folks interested in seeing it monthly, or would you prefer it quarterly? I guess it depends on how much folks like to look at pages of numbers.
It's a nice reminder sometimes to just to refresh for us what some of the things we're working on and how we're planning to get there. I like
Yeah.
monthly myself.
And once you get in a routine of doing it, to do it monthly, it's a good routine to be in, so that's no problem. Yes. The next item was to prepare the procurement bylaw. That bylaw is actively being worked on. Yes, we did have a template that had been worked on a few years ago. We've been working at updating that. There's a lot of things to think through as you do this, and we don't want to just we want to do a really good and thorough and deep job. And as you research procurement policies or bylaws from other municipalities, like everyone is different, everyone has good things about it, so we're trying to figure out how to make it the best one we can have in it. And it's also a matter of how detailed do you want it to be. Like at the moment in our draft, we've looked at adding a tendering piece and a purchase order piece and an approval piece, but then it's kind of like, does that just make it too big? Maybe we're better to pull those out and have those as separate policies to go along with it. So we continue to work with it, but it's a big piece of work to work on. And then once we're happy with it, it'll be sent to both legal and audit to get their viewpoints. So the hope would be, well, September's going to be here remarkably soon. September or October, probably more likely October. The next point was to update the council remuneration bylaw. That will be worked on with HR, as well as updating the staff travel and meal remuneration policy, again, with HR. And I'm waiting to hear back from HR as to what next steps are. Updating the electronic devices and social media policy to include use of personal devices and permitted reimbursements, including disposition of devices and cleaning of city data. That will be done in conjunction with HR and IT, and we're hoping to be working on it later this month with the target of having it to come to council in September. And the last one is updating the redistribution of use of city property, and that is being done with Public Works, and that policy is in progress, and the target timeframe is to bring it to committee and council for the September meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you for that update report, Betty. Mayor Brown.
Mr. Chair, just on that last point, update redistribution and use of city property policy with Public Works. Maybe it doesn't fit here, but what I mentioned earlier with the Kerry facility, and this was in the BDO report about naming rights. I think that we were highlighted by the fact of what happened at the Eastlink Centre. Should we not be looking at the naming for the Kerry facility as something that we work in concert with the board or the board chair to ensure that we don't get our fingers slapped again over doing something that we should be following policy? Is that all right? Can I ask that, Mr. Chair, through you to the manager?
Yes.
Thank you,
Betty?
Mr. Chair, and through the chair to Mayor Brown. Yes, that one is the next one on the list that didn't quite make it onto this list, but yes, that is in the BDO report and will be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody at staff was asking about that just yesterday, and it was to do with street naming that they brought this in, and I looked it up, and it's like, well, that one's naming rights which is a bit different, but yeah, that one is the next one after.
Yeah,
this
so
one.
whether, Mr. Chair, it's the manager of finance or the CAO, I think that it should be addressed sooner than later, because I think the contract ends this year for that Bella Line agreement, so it would be in our best interest to follow up. Thank you.
All right, and that concludes your report on that, Betty. Does any further questions, Betty, on the matrix? All right. We're getting to the end. Number 11, the long-term debt request for proposals. And Betty?
Yeah, so this is quite a significant report, and we brought it to the last committee meeting, and it was suggested that we go to the province and discuss the possibility of partnering with them for funding, and Councillor McAleer and Mayor Brown and myself met with folks from the province. Their policy would be that they could lend to a municipality at their cost of borrowing plus 1%, which is more than we are being offered by the bank at the moment. I've listed out here the 3 different banks that we got bids back from, and they range from, the lowest spread is 0.4%. The province is on there at a 1.1% spread, and the bank with the highest spread was 1.18%. So it seems like their cost of borrowing is the same, virtually the same for any of the 3 banks. It's the spread that gets added on to that rate to give us what our rate is. And the loan term that had the lowest spread was 5 years by bank number 2, and that's looking at a swap term of 30 years, loan term of 5 years. Now, in addition to meeting with the province, Councillor McAleer, myself, and 2 of my team members also had a meeting with the swap team from the bank that we're looking at taking the funding from, and they were able to answer some more of our questions to help us understand how this whole process works and what the initial rate is compared to the different terms, loan terms, swap terms, credit spread. We spent some time talking to them about different spreads and why spreads are different for the different years. I would have thought if interest rates are expected to go down over the next few years, why is it more expensive to borrow money longer term? And they indicated that was tied into the cost of kind of committing that money for that length of time. And it makes, what I'm suggesting is that we go with the 5-year term, the 4% spread. So that would be adding 0.4% on top of whatever the loan facility rate is at the time. Now, when we were first given these rates, it was 3.92%. So with the 0.4% spread, that would give us a cost of borrowing at 4.32. When we spoke to the folks from the bank last week, the 4.92 was now, sorry, did I say that right? That the 3.92 is now between 4.25 and 4.3. Now, he said these rates are have moderate fluctuations all the time, so they can't give us an exact rate right now. It depends on when we say, okay, we're ready to borrow, then they would tell us what the rate is. But that would have, instead of being 4.32 like we talked about last meeting, we're more like 4.7% now. We're looking at borrowing $30 million right away and the additional $20 million as needed. It may be 2 chunks of $10 million each, or it may be $20 million together. We have some line of credit facilities that we've drawn on now for some short-term funding. We would like to get those paid off, and then it would be as the bills come in for our capital projects that would determine when we need to take the rest of the money. So the recommendation here is that we make a recommendation to council to accept the RFP from the Royal Bank over a 5-year term. So the overall, it would be for a 30-year loan facility, but for tying in the terms for 5 years. And that's because the expectation is loan rates will be coming down. So we don't want to tie ourselves in for too long, as well as the fact that that's the lowest credit spread.
And that's at the 4.32 still, till the end of August, will they hold that?
No, it will likely be higher. When we spoke to them last week, the 4.32 had climbed to more in the range of 4.7.
Councillor Drown?
Yeah, I'm just saying, so are you talking about locking the 50 million in, or borrowing the 50 million, for 5 years, term, for a 30-year, I'll just use your swap term, you know, or can we borrow 30 million now and 20 million, you know, within, you know, a couple of months, or, you know, 6 months? What does this mean?
We need 30 million right away, and then the additional 20 million as our cash flow demands it.
So do we have to lock in 50 million now, or what I'm thinking is, can we borrow 30 million now at this rate? And then within 6 months or 8 months or whatever, when we need the rest, can we get another rate, or do we have to borrow it all at this rate?
Through the chair to Councillor Duran, the rate would be set when we actually do the borrowing. So we would be, if we do 30 million now, it will be at the rate that's in effect, approximately 4.7. And then when we take the additional 20 million, it would be at the rate that it's at that time.
That rate, okay. That's great. They keep saying it's gonna go down, but it's, who knows, right? So,
So, Mr. Chair, could I just ask a question, just going back to the
Mayor Brown? Mayor Brown?
23-24 budget? The new debt is 30 million. That's the debt that we borrowed 3 years ago at 2.8%. And that new debt is for cash flow. Like, I'm just trying to, if we borrow 20 and then another 30, in effect, we have 80 million. Am I right to say that? Through the chair to the finance manager?
Through the chair to your worship. So the 30 million new debt, you're talking about the 30 million new debt that's indicated in the budget?
Yep.
No, the 30 million is part of what we're talking about here.
30 million up the 30 plus the 20. Is that what you're saying? Like, you want to borrow 20 now, right? That's the first offer is at 20 million, right? We're looking at 20,
We're looking at 30,
30.
yes.
So 30 added on to 81 is 110, 111 million. And then you
Yes.
want to add another 20.
Yes.
But the 35 that we borrowed several years ago, that 30 million, where's that at?
The 30 million that we borrowed a few years ago, I think we took it out in early 2020.
Yep.
So we've been making regular payments on that. But yes, most of that is still outstanding. That's over, I don't have the financial statements in front of me, but it was over 20 or 25 years. So that will continue to be repaid over that term. Then the 30 million that was indicated in the budget for new debt, that was used to calculate additional interest, to make sure we were budgeting for the interest. But exactly when we would take that out, at the time, we didn't know for sure when we would be taking it out, but that allowed interest on $30 million. So we're just now taking out the first million in August, and we'll take some more out probably in the fall. And yes, it's an additional 50 million, but we haven't been paying interest on the 50 million over the whole year. So that was to give us an estimation for interest for the budget purposes for the expense.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, it's not clear. I know that we borrowed the 35, we get net new debt 30 million. When you borrow money to pay down debt, that's debt that's coming in, right? Like, for example, let's take, if the bills come in tomorrow for the Simmons Aqua Arena facility for 35 million, we would have to have $35 million.
To pay those bills, yes,
Right.
we would.
So we do have 30 million to pay bills with that new debt. Yay or
With the new-
nay?
yes, we will.
Yeah, that's, so that 30 million that's under new debt
Yes,
is in the bank. It's something that we can draw from to pay debt.
we will when we put this long-term debt into place. It's not in the bank now, no.
It hasn't been, but it's borrowed at the 2.8% rate, correct?
Oh, you're talking, my apologies. There's a 30 million new debt
Yeah,
that's in the budget.
yeah. I'm talking about last year's, or this year's fiscal budget, fiscal services 23, 24, new debt $30 million.
So that's not the debt from 2020, from 2020. That 30 million from 2020 is different debt, and that has been borrowed and it has been spent.
Okay,
But, for instance, last year, we spent 35 million on capital assets, but we didn't take on any new
debt.
long-term debt last year. We took on some new short-term debt.
okay,
So the first 30 million of the debt we're talking about now will largely go to pay off short-term debt.
debt. Okay, okay. Okay. And you're comfortable in just doing 30 million now, 20 million later, not just do the whole 50 million? Is there rationale, there must be a rationale for it.
Yes, I don't want to be paying interest on money that's going to be sitting in the bank.
Okay, okay.
But it'll be interesting drawing down the first 30 million because I don't yet know what the full process is. So once we get approval, if we get approval from council next week, what's the process then from the bank? How long does it take to get all our ducks in a row to have that money flowed to us? Does it happen in a week? Does it happen in a month? Does it happen overnight? And once I'm more familiar with that process, then I can plan for the next time that we need to do a drawdown.
Thank you, Betty. Is there any more questions to Manager Betty on the recommendation? Are we good to, as a committee, for this to go to council? So moved by Mayor Brown. Any seconder? Seconder, Councillor Drown. Thank you. Thank you, Betty. Oh, enough. Okay. Item 12, recent federal and provincial funding announcements benefiting the city. Betty, again.
So this is to provide information to the committee and give a chance for any questions or discussion that folks want to have regarding, I think there was 3 recent funding announcements that have been made here at City Hall. The first one was on June 12th, and that was $5 million that was announced to create an 82-unit project owned and operated by the PEI Housing Corporation. The second one was on July the 18th from FCM's Green Municipal Fund. Part of that was a grant, $242,000 was a grant, and 1.6 million was a loan, and that's to upgrade the energy efficiency of several city buildings, City Hall, the Fire Hall, and the West Royalty Community Center. And the third one was just last week, August the 2nd, The Government of Canada is investing $4.6 million towards the construction of a maintenance facility and $4.4 million for the purchase of new electric and diesel buses. And the provincial government, $3.8 million towards the construction of a new maintenance facility and $3.7 for the purchase of new electric and diesel buses. And this funding is part of the Investing in Canada infrastructure program, and it was included as a partner funding in the transit portion of the 23-24 capital budget.
Any questions or comments to Betty on that? Betty, I'm just wondering, like on the July 18th announcement, the city of Charlottetown, $1.8 million, $242,000 grant, and a $1.6 million loan, let's call it, from FCM. Is there a loan rate on that? Is it zero interest, or any sense of what the interest rate is on the loan portion of?
I don't know offhand,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, but I certainly can look into that and let you know.
No, that's fine. And just curious, on the transit piece and all the moving parts with that, like am I right in understanding the city owns the property, the land that the new building is going on, and the city will continue to own that
Yes.
land and building?
Yes.
And then the buses, I know we got our great partner, T3, Mike Cassidy Group, but so the buses, at the end of the day, are they T3's buses, the city's buses? Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's, no, just want to clarify that. All right. Okay. Thank you, Betty, for that summary. And last item, insurance.
The city's insurance runs for a period of from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. So we've been working with our insurance folks to give them lists of assets, buildings and vehicles and drivers and a variety of things for them to give us a new quote on our insurance, which they have now done. And there are some significant increases, but I know at budget time, we just reached out to Cook Insurance to give us a ballpark for what we should be budgeting for. So we were expecting some large increases. The information is given here, what the 2022 premium is, what the 2023 premium is, in 3 different areas: our cyber insurance, our automobile insurance, and everything else: the property liability, umbrella liability, equipment breakdown, crime, and council accident insurance. Now, for the cyber insurance, there are some pieces our IT department are working on to improve areas for the cyber insurance that in the future will, don't know that it'll save us money, but it'll give us better protection and a lower deductible than what we currently have. The automobile insurance, they indicated our loss rate is relatively high there, which is why there's quite a high increase in that area. And then everything else is the largest piece of our insurance, and that has an almost 16% increase, which we are told is well within industry standard. And while it does seem high, it's the way insurance is going these days with all the things going on. Insurance, there's a lot happening in insurance: higher costs, higher replacement costs, more damage from lots of areas. So the recommendation is to approve for the next 12 months. Our insurance with Cook Insurance, and the insurance company is Marsh Canada. And the liability piece, the insurer is offering a long-term agreement whereby if we commit to them for the next 2 years, they will limit the increase to 10% in year 1 and 5% in year 2. And that is for the liability piece, so it's approximately $300,000 in each of those years. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure which piece it is. It's part of the property liability, et cetera, piece in there. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of it. And seeing as that piece had a 16% increase in the current year, if we were to lock in for the next 2 years at those lower rates, I think that's a good business decision. While we're not committed to Cook and Marsh, we took this out to tender last year, so this is year 2. And at the time, we awarded them the tender for the first year with the option to renew for each of the next 5 years. So we are certainly well within that period. But my understanding is it's an option to renew. I don't think we're necessarily committed to them. But they were significantly lower than the other bids that we received at the time the tender went out. I've also given a little summary there under the financial implications of, that's from our financial statements, so showing what our budget is for the 12 months ended March of 22, March of 23, and March of 24, as well as what the actual expenditure ended up being. And the reason this actual expenditure doesn't tie into what the premium given us by Cook is because the first 3 months of the fiscal year are at last year's rates, and then the next 9 months are at the new rates they're giving us. So we are certainly within our budget. Stephen and I were trying to figure out why the budget was so generous, and it almost looks to me like we budgeted the full amount more or less under city, but then we also had insurance budgeted under the utility as well, whereas the quote we're given here is for both city and utility. So it's likely an area we could look at next year and perhaps reduce the budget for insurance just a little bit.
Could I just clarify that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mayor Brown.
Yeah, just to the chair, to Betty. So Betty, is the insurance, again, I didn't hear, it's a point of clarification, is it for both the utility and municipal government?
That is correct.
Did we do it in the past like that? I don't know. I think
To
we,
do them both together, yes.
we've always done them together. Okay. And just, Mr. Chair, just to follow up quickly. Don Iveson, former mayor of Edmonton, now works with Cooper's Insurance of Canada. And he gave a great presentation at our FCM about insurance cost and the liabilities to municipalities, towns, and so forth. And his advice was very clear that we have to learn how to be more adaptive. We have to be more prepared to endure severe or extreme climatic conditions or events, and that those mitigation efforts will help to offset insurance claims, because the insurance companies, not just in Canada, but everywhere, are being hit so hard, and that's why the premiums are going up, and just some people can't afford it. So, it's not a good situation to be in, but for municipalities, we need to be insured. And on the cyber insurance, I'm glad that we do have that because of all the firewalls that we do build in our system. There are still hackers that break through, and that was brought to my attention when I was at a recent event that someone who's into cyber insurance said, make sure your city does have it, because it's getting to be a more of a, not a daily, but a reoccurring insurance claim. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and Betty, just so I'm clear, so by going with the 2-year commitment or whatever, on average, instead of looking at 16.8, we'll be looking at maybe 13.4 and 12.4? So is that basically what the 2-year,
That is my understanding, yes.
yeah, so there's a 3 or 4% saving by a 2-year commitment, basically. All right.
I'll move
Are
that
we good on the
we accept
insurance?
their recommendation to move it to council.
So moved, and seconder?
Second.
Yeah. Mayor Brown, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved.
Thank you, sir.
Councillor McCabe, Councillor Drong, thank you.